Hey, what's up, guys? I wanted to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers and why I think they are a contender for next year. And it is mostly to do with the fact that James Harden signed this new team friendly contract with them that let them get more players. And I think it's a big reason as to why they're going to be like their championship window of contention is like next year and maybe the year after that. So James Harden had a player option this upcoming season, and obviously he declined it. And there was lots of talk about whether or not he would sign a max deal, a 5-year deal, or anything like that with the 76ers. And a lot of people, including myself, thought that would be a really bad idea because obviously James Harden has not been the MVP caliber Hall of Famer James Harden that he is. Obviously, he's still really good, but this past 2 seasons, to be honest, he has not been himself ever since that hamstring injury against the Bucks in the playoffs, whenever that was. Ever since then, last season, he's just not been at the score that he used to be in Houston. Obviously, it was since we came into Brooklyn when he was playing with Kyrie and KD, he was taking more of a point guard role. But like last season, especially, his scoring was not really the same, and like his off the dribble and his speed was not the same as he once was. And I really think that hamstring injury just slowed him down a lot. Then he got traded to the 76ers midway through the season. And, he was good. He averaged like 22 and like 10 assists, but it obviously wasn't the James Harden of Houston. And there was a lot of conversation about whether he was worth the money, the 5-year max or whatever in the world he was going to get. And there was a lot of people saying like he shouldn't get it because he's not worth that money anymore. And James Harden and the 76ers came to an agreement on a 1+1 contract. So it's 1 year next year, and then it's a player option the year after that. And it's like a big discount. Like it says in this article right here, it's a 15 million discount. So obviously, if you're a player like James Harden taking a pay cut of 15 million in a year, that means that you're being more serious. And like it says here in this article, I had conversations with Daryl and it was explained how we could get better and what the market value was for certain players. I told Daryl to improve the roster, sign who we needed to sign, and give me whatever is left over. Harden told Yahoo Sports, "This is how bad I want to win. I want to compete for a championship. That's all that matters to me at this stage. I'm willing to take less to put us in a position to accomplish that." Now, this is a great sentiment and like a really good mindset from James Harden. Like I absolutely love this. This is exactly what he should be doing at this point in his career. He's 32, almost 33 years old now. Hopefully this last during this off season he's been getting healthier and improving off of his hamstring, and he can come back better than he has been last season, and he can just look a little bit more like the James Harden of the old because he's not getting any younger. And this situation where he's never had a player as good as Joel Embiid on his team. Obviously Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, they were really good teammates for James Harden, but none of them are at Joel Embiid prime right now, MVP caliber Joel Embiid prime. And this is his best opportunity to win with a running mate like Joel. And this just shows to me and to everybody that, obviously he wants to win. He's willing to take a pay cut, a $15 million pay cut to get that championship, which is why I say that this upcoming season and maybe the next season is this 2-year gap for the 76ers to really win. Because after that, if they still don't win, I don't know how good James Harden will be in another 2 years. And at that point, in another 2 years, he's probably going to want as much money as he can get at that point because he's going to be almost like 34, almost 35 or something like that. And at that point, you know, try and get as much money as you can. I don't blame you for it. But since he signed this deal, the 76ers had an opportunity to sign PJ Tucker from Miami for 3 years, 33 million, and signed Daniel House to 2 years, 8.5 million. And they also picked up DeAnthony Melton via a trade and signed Trevlon Queen, the 2021-22 G League MVP. I really like all of these moves. Obviously, PJ Tucker and Daniel House were part of those Houston teams that James Harden was leading to multiple playoff runs. PJ Tucker is a really hard nosed defender and 41% 3-point shooter this past season. I mean, he is pretty old. He's like almost 36 at this point, but I don't really see him getting that much worse or anything like that. Daniel House as well uh, played with James Harden in Houston. He's also a good 3-point shooter and a good defender. DeAnthony Melton, a really good pickup from the Grizzlies. They traded Danny Green. I don't even know what they traded. I think they traded some picks for DeAnthony Melton, but he's a really good defender, shooting guard, backup guy, and Trevlon Queen. I don't really know much about him, but he's another player. And as long as James Harden is really taking this seriously, and so far it seems like he is, I see the 76ers as a much better team now than they were last season. Hopefully, James Harden gets back up to, he doesn't even need to be like MVP caliber. I think if he's more of a 25 and 10 guy, I mean, last season he was like 22 and 10, but the way he was scoring, he wasn't the same off the dribble. Off the ball, James Harden has never been super active off the ball, and maybe he improves in that area somehow as well. But yeah, I've always been a fan of James Harden, and he was criticized a lot from in Brooklyn when he wasn't playing well, rightfully so, because at some points he looked like he didn't even care. Obviously, it was a whole different situation in Brooklyn, a whole thing, and now that Brooklyn situation is just blowing up, whatever. But I really like James Harden. I think that with this offseason, he can really get rested and heal and get better. And he hopefully comes out guns blazing next season. Joel Embiid as well. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He was second in MVP voting, if I'm not mistaken. And, this is how the NBA works. Nikola Jokic is not going to win a third MVP in a row. That doesn't happen anymore. Like, Giannis should have, or, he could have won a third MVP after he won his first two, but he didn't because, voters fatigue and all that stuff. So I feel like Joel Embiid is like the prime contender at this point, since he was like second behind Jokic the past 2 years. He's going to want to win that MVP, man. Like, I don't blame him. He's going to come out hopefully playing his best basketball ever. He's been absolutely mental this last offseason, scoring in every way possible. Still a really good defender as well. And I think, the pick and roll between James Harden and Joel Embiid is probably the best play in the NBA in any team. Like, I don't know what other team has two players who can play the pick and roll together as well as these guys can. And, other players as well on this team. Tyrese Maxey, I think he's going into his third season. He had a really good season last year. I didn't even know this about Tyrese Maxey, but he was the third most efficient 3-point shooter last year. I think he was like 41% or something like that. And when I think of Tyrese Maxey, I think of him just gunning down the floor, running super fast, off the dribble, finishing really well. And I didn't even think of him as like that good of a 3-point shooter. Obviously he is. What's his jump going to be into his next third season, I believe? I think that he could be the third best player on this team. I think he is the third best player on this team. And I think that the emergence of him as another ball handler can help maybe James Harden off the ball, play a bit more off the ball, or just give him some less ball handling duties, so then his body stays healthy throughout the season. They still have Tobias Harris, and Tobias Harris is who he is. Honestly, this past postseason, he played a lot better than I thought that he would, but he's still on a really big contract, almost $30 million, or I think $30 million. I don't really know if he's really worth that $30 million, but I think there's still a possibility for Tobias Harris to get traded somewhere and for them to get value out of him, maybe. And uh, I don't know. I don't really know what his role on this team is. As like, he's not the greatest catch and shoot 3-point shooter, and he's not the greatest defender. He's pretty decent at both of those things. And, he's more effective when he has the ball in his hands, but obviously on this team, you don't really want him with the ball in his hands all the time. So, his role is still kind of a question mark. And I think they might look to trade him sometime throughout the season to get maybe more shooters slash defenders. Or maybe they just keep him. I don't know. I also have some questions about Matisse Thybulle. What are they going to do with him? Obviously, one of the best on ball defenders in the passing lanes. He gets a lot of steals in the league. Offensively, he's a complete zero. And on this team, where a starting lineup of James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris, Matisse, like as good of a defender as he is, I don't know his offense being a zero. It's really rough to play on a team when he's not that much of a 3-point shooter at all. His offense hasn't come around very much at all. He doesn't seem to be a threat on offense at all. He usually doesn't get defended by the other team or defended seriously by the other team. So his role and Tobias Harris, they are both kind of in question for me. It is possible for both of them to get traded this season, and I wouldn't be surprised if either of them do. But I also wouldn't be super surprised if they both stay because I think they both can play key roles. Obviously, Matisse, amazing, amazing defender, and Tobias, the contract is hefty, but I don't know how much value you're going to get in return for him at this stage. Maybe it's better off just keeping him at this point. So, those are also the questions that Daryl Morey has to ask himself. In terms of off the bench, they would have DeAnthony Melton, like I said, who is a really good defender. This past season, he was like 15 in steals per game, 18th in defensive blocks plus minus, defensive rating, he was up there, steals, he was up there, steal percentage, he was second in the league. Obviously, all of these stats, they're just stats. But defensively, he is like that, and I think he'll play a really good role off the bench for this team. As well, you have PJ Tucker. You still have Shake Milton, who can do something. Georges Niang, who can shoot it pretty well. You have Trevlon Queen now. I don't know what to expect from him, to be honest. Daniel House Jr., you have him. Paul Reed, B-Ball Paul, you have him. So you still have Paul Millsap. I don't know if that'll be anything at all. But off the bench, you'll have a pretty good amount of players, right? And, James Harden coming back with a vengeance. He's taking this season really seriously. Joel Embiid, I think, coming back with a vengeance, trying to win MVP. Tyrese Maxey, the jump that he'll have. All three of these guys, they played like last season. It was just the Joel Embiid show and Tyrese Maxey for half the season, and then James Harden showed up because Ben Simmons wasn't playing, and they were like the third seed in the conference. So now with a fully healthy, hopefully, Joel and James, and after having half a season together and this off season together, I didn't expect them to win immediately after they got traded. Like immediately after James Harden got traded. Like, you don't really win a championship when you get a star of James Harden's caliber midway through the season. You really need to have time to gel. And I think that last season, this postseason, help gel together. And now this upcoming season, they'll both be coming back with a vengeance. Like I said, Tyrese Maxey's going to jump up in his third season for sure. You have questions about Tobias Harris and Matisse Thybulle. How much are they going to contribute? What are their roles on this team? But off the bench, you got a lot better with DeAnthony Melton and PJ Tucker. Georges Niang is still pretty good. Daniel House Jr. Just good defenders and shooters. And that's what you need around Joel and James Harden. And, Doc Rivers, he's still the coach there. Obviously, Doc is not the best coach. He won in 2008 with the Celtics, but since then he hasn't done much except blow a lot of 3-1 leads. He has had iffy rotations and just dumb stuff that he does occasionally. But I mean, other than that, it's all about the health. How healthy can they all be together? How well can the bench gel together and, play their roles defending and shooting? How good is James Harden going to be? Is he going to be Houston James Harden? I don't know if he'll be that level, but is he going to be closer to that? Or is he really not going to show signs of improvement at all? He's 32 going on to 33. He can say that, he can say all this stuff, but he still has to prove it. But I really like their chances, and I think that this upcoming season will be their best chance for the 76ers to win. Yeah. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.